Okay, well, strange things happening all around this, uh, all around this event in Las Vegas, and we're going to talk about it right away, folks, on today's live here on CBN News. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chuck Holton, and if you don't know much about me, I'm a former Army Ranger who became a war correspondent more than 20 years ago, and have spent most of the last 2 decades in wars and disasters around the globe. And so this is, I mean, I'm not typically talking about what's going on in Las Vegas, Nevada, but suffice it to say, there are some things that are happening, or things that have come out about the person they say is responsible for the event that took place in Nevada on the 1st of January that I think I can speak to and bring some context. There's also a lot of conspiracy theory and stuff that's going on around this event. And I think it's important that we as believers are careful in what we believe, even if it fits the narrative of our tribe. And I also want to just mention that I've done more talking about this over on my channel. So if you go to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton here on YouTube, it's just at Hot Zone Podcast on YouTube. Let's see, we can just go at Hot Zone Podcast over there. So you can click on that, or well, go to at Hot Zone Podcast on YouTube, and you can find out more about what's going on. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be releasing 2 interviews that I did with Green Berets. Well, one was a Green Beret, one is a law enforcement officer from Las Vegas who has inside knowledge about some of the attacks that have happened in Las Vegas, and especially concerning this most recent one. I'm going to be releasing that today, hopefully on my YouTube channel. So Barbara Lamar is saying, watch Sean Ryan's interview about it. We're going to be talking about Sean Ryan's interview today, right now, here in just a moment, because this is part of what I'm talking about. There's a tremendous amount of interest in this subject, and some people are jumping on the bandwagon in order to try to gain notoriety. And I want to specifically address the interview on Sean Ryan that took place, that came out yesterday, because it's had millions of views already. And I think there are some real sort of head scratchers with this interview, and I don't think we should just automatically swallow what the guy is selling lock, stock, and barrel. Okay, I think we need to be pretty circumspect about taking a look at what's going on and what's coming out about this. As a matter of fact, there are even there's some evidence that Russian propaganda bots have been jumping into the fray and trying to spread, uh, you know, crazy ideas, dissension, and try to get people all spun up about this. And because we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Russia is engaging in information war against the United States, trying desperately to create dissension, division, anger, and chaos in America. And so uh, Antoniak says, but we should swallow what you are selling? No, uh, no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't just swallow it lock, stock, and barrel. I'm going to present to you some information from sources that are closer to the action, so to speak. And I'm going to draw some questions to your mind as to the information that's already been put out, especially on that Sean Ryan interview. So, first of all, let's start with what actually happened in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas police have put out that there was a now, one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to say the name of the assailant, the person who apparently perpetrated this uh, supposed terror event in Las Vegas at the Trump Hotel, because we don't want to give people any reason to think that if they do something crazy like this, that they're going to become famous. Okay, so many of these events turn out to be somebody who just wants to go out with a bang, and they figure, if I'm going to off myself, I'm going to do it in a way that is going to at least get me some notoriety so that I won't go, live in obscurity. I'm not living it, die in obscurity. And so we don't want to play into that. So I'm not going to say this guy's name, but he was a former he is a former Green Beret. He was an active duty Green Beret with multiple combat tours to Afghanistan. And uh, he rented a Tesla Cybertruck from an online app called Turo, which I've used before, that you can use to um, you can use to rent vehicles from individuals. It's kind of like Airbnb for rental cars. So if you have an extra car that's sitting in your driveway and you want to make it, uh, you, good grief. Really, you guys, you're going to sit there and argue about what Sabbath day means? How about we focus here? Let's focus on what we're talking about. The whole conversation in there is about the Sabbath. Like let's okay, whatever you think about the Sabbath, let's leave that beside and let's talk about what's going on here. Okay. Uh, so he rented a Tesla Cybertruck from this Turo app. Probably the reason he used the Turo app is because he specifically wanted to use a Cybertruck. And it's a little bit difficult to rent a Cybertruck from uh, from Enterprise or Alamo or something like that. Okay. He joined the military in 2006. He was 37 years old. He was divorced and remarried, has a child, and ostensibly it may have suffered from post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury. Okay. So he drove this truck from Colorado to Las Vegas. At some point, he filled up the bed of the truck with large explosives. I'm sorry, large, not explosives, large fireworks and gas tanks, or gas cans full of gasoline, and propane tanks, camping gas, which is a pretty dangerous mix, you could imagine. He then drove that thing up to the front door of the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. And uh, according to reports, he then lit the fuse on those things. And we can talk more about how that works. And then committed suicide. And right after that, the truck caught fire and detonated. Okay. So this is that's uh, what happened. After the fact, after the fire was put out, they found uh, that the Tesla actually contained the explosion quite a bit, to the point that it didn't even break the windows in the front doors of the hotel. And that has probably more to do. I mean, Elon Musk is uh, going, he's talking a lot about, oh, well, this proves how great the Cybertruck is, and that it was, I'm going to reduce the amount of comments out here. You're going to have to be on for 10 minutes before you can uh, comment. Okay. So, okay. So Michael Hardesty said, I'm going to go ahead and address some of these claims. He says he was highly decorated, was a Green Beret. He had special ops training. Plus, they cannot identify the body. Plus, a Tesla truck can drive by itself. Okay. First of all, let's address the Tesla truck part of this. There's a whole lot to unpack here. You can imagine. I mean, a whole lot. First of all, a Tesla truck cannot drive without a live driver actively taking part in the front seat. If you put a mannequin in the front seat or, God forbid, a dead body, the truck will not engage auto drive. It will not keep it going. As a matter of fact, if you've ever driven one of these Teslas and you tried to, like I did this one time, I rented a Tesla and I was driving around on a highway in California and I was like, wow, this is great. I could just take a nap. And I leaned my head against the window to pretend like I was taking a nap. And immediately the car said, you are not, the car actually went bing. It said, you are not paying attention. You have lost the privilege of self-driving for the rest of this trip. And it turned off the auto drive function. So if you were not alive in the front seat of a Tesla, the auto drive would not work. Okay. Now, that being the case, he was not dead before he got to the Trump Tower. Okay. And now I'm going to address the Sean Ryan thing. I'm going to address it. So just be patient. I'm getting to that. I'm trying to work to help people who haven't been following this understand what is going on. So here's what we're okay. Next, so number one, the Tesla Cybertruck did not drive itself to the hotel. Okay, that did not happen. The the claim that the truck was so strong that it contained the explosion that otherwise would have blown up the building or something is not true either, because fireworks are designed to make a lot of noise and smoke without having a large explosive or concussive force. So if you put those things in the back of a truck, yes, the truck is strong for sure. The truck bed is strong, but those things are not going to have the concussive force of an actual explosive. And even if you put gasoline in there, the gasoline burns more than explodes. It's going to be a lot of fire, but it's not going to increase the concussive force. The only thing that could increase the concussive force would be if you managed to use a propane tank in a way that would make it explode. However, those tanks have fail-safes on them that will cause them to burn before they explode as well. Okay. Now, Mega Danny says Sean Ryan has sources you couldn't even think about having. Perhaps, but I've got a few sources myself, and I'll tell you why. There is an alumni of elite law enforcement officers in this country. They are alumni of an elite training academy in Little Rock, Arkansas called the Direct Action Resource Center, Darcy. It's a 700-acre campus outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. It's run by former special operators, and it is run specifically for elite law enforcement and military personnel. They do something called a law enforcement counterterrorism course that they put FBI, DEA, ATF, SWAT teams from around the country all through in order to make them better prepared to deal with a massive multi-cell terror attack somewhere in the United States. And these guys uh, there are, I mean, it is the most realistic firearms training you can possibly get on planet Earth. I, other than actually being in combat, okay? Because uh, they use live role players, live bad guys with real weapons using rubber bullets, not paintball. They're using rubber bullets, okay? And so they train guys to deal specifically with situations like this. Now, those guys that have been through that course have spread out across the country with law enforcement agencies in elite level law enforcement across the country. Many of those guys are in Las Vegas. Many of the SWAT members and things like that in Las Vegas have been to Darcy. And those of us who have been through Darcy, I've been through it twice. Those of us who've been through Darcy have a chat room that we share information on across the globe. And so I'm I'm not telling you anything that is secret, but we are hearing from guys that are literally the guys who are serving the warrants on the houses of the attacker from New Orleans and the guy from Colorado. Again, I'm not going to say those guys' names. And I even interviewed one of them yesterday in Las Vegas, and it will go up on my channel shortly after this live ends. Okay? So we are going to air that interview I did with him talking about what he thinks about this. Now, let's talk about the Sean Ryan interview. Okay? So there's more information coming out about this Green Beret. It turns out that he was actually fairly well known. He was actually a reality TV star. He went on a TV show back in, I think, 2017 or so. And it was like an ultimate soldier challenge, something like that. So he is kind of a well known guy. And yesterday, the Las Vegas Police Department released what they call a manifesto that was a note left behind by this guy, this Green Beret, explaining why he was doing what he was doing. And so we are going to talk about that. Sorry, I'm trying to manage the chat a little bit as well, since we don't apparently don't have lives on anybody on live. We were supposed to have some people managing our chat here, but apparently we're not. So let's talk about the Sean Ryan interview. Yesterday, an interview came out between Sean Ryan and this guy that many of you might not have ever heard of. And his name is Sam Shoemate. He calls himself an analyst from Remnant Ministries. Okay. Okay. So Sam Shoemate runs a large Instagram channel that helps or gives an outlet for what he calls whistleblowers from the United States military, people who want to report illegal or immoral things that are taking place by people in the military. And mostly it's people that are reporting on their commanders. They are complaining about all sorts of things, going all the way back to COVID. This guy was apparently kicked out of the military because he refused to get the, uh, you know what? I can't say it or they'll boot us off of YouTube. That's fine, whatever. I'm not going to get into that, but that's how he got started. So this guy, let's see if I tell you what, I'm going to add a moderator here. Novak Custom Harvesting, you just became a moderator, so you can help manage the chat for me. So this guy, Sam Shoemate, claims to have received an email from the assailant in the Las Vegas event. He released this email, or he forwarded this email to Sean Ryan. It makes some pretty interesting claims, and Sean Ryan felt like he should give this guy a hearing. So he brought him in and did an interview with him. It's become a very popular interview. Now, I'm not going to impugn Sean Ryan. He's a brother in Christ. I'm not going to impugn Sam Shoemate. I'm going to report to you the news that you may not have heard that could give you some context to what they are saying. So first of all, let's talk about the uh, note that was left that was released by the Las Vegas Police Department yesterday, because this is going to give you some context. Okay, so we'll start here. Now I'm going to show you the note and we're going to read it together. Okay, so here it is. And I got to make my screen a little bigger. This is the note. This is the second part of it. The first part isn't really germane. The second part of it, here's what the assailant in the terror attack at Trump Hotel wrote that was released by the Las Vegas Police Department. He says, "We are the United States of America, the best country people ever to exist. But right now we are terminally ill and headed toward collapse." Hard to disagree with that. "We are crumbling because of a lack of self-respect, morals, misspelled, and respect for others. Greed and gluttony has consumed us. The top 1% decided long ago they weren't going to bring everyone else with them. You are cattle to them. We have strayed from family values and corrupted our minds, and I am a prime example of having it all but never being enough." Hard to disagree with any of this so far. "A lot of us are just sitting around waiting to die. No sunlight, no steps, no fresh air, no hope. Our children are addicted to screens by the age of 2. We are filling our bodies with processed foods." Okay, hard to disagree with, but also not a reason to off yourself in front of the Trump Tower. Okay, so um, now I just a lot of this goes along with the book that I just released called "The Death of Civilization." Death of Civilization is available over at my website, chuckholton.com, if you want to read it. But anyway, my book would not disagree with most of what he's written so far. He goes on, "We must take these actions if we're going to make it past the next few years in one piece. Number one, we must end the war in Ukraine with negotiated settlement. It's the only way." Many people feel that way. Again, not a reason. This guy appears to have been a proponent of the war in Ukraine, a supporter of Ukraine, at least, not a supporter of Russia in previous posts on social media. So it's interesting to see him say this. This is not a condemnation of Ukraine. It's just apparently a recognition that they're going to need a negotiated settlement. I think most Ukrainians, based on my recent trip to Ukraine, would agree with that statement. Focus on strength and winning. Masculinity is good and men must be leaders. Strength is a deterrent and fear is the product. I'm not sure how that squares with offing yourself in front of Trump Tower, but I agree with that statement. Weeded out those in our government and military who do not idealize number two. The income equality in this country and cost of living is outrageous. The number of homeless on our street is embarrassing and disgusting. Have some pride and take care of this. Stop obsessing over diversity. We are all diverse, and DEI is a cancer. Hard to disagree with that. Thankfully, we rejected the DEI candidate and will have a real president instead of weekend at Bernie's. Okay, if that's how you feel, then what's with the giant event that you just perpetrated in front of Trump Tower? We must move on from the culture and weakness and self-enrichment perpetuated by our senior political and military leaders. We are done with the blatant corruption. Our soldiers are done fighting wars without end, states, or clear objectives. Okay, making it sound like he's not exactly happy with the way that the war in Afghanistan ended. Many soldiers are not. That definitely is still not a reason to off yourself. This was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles, and again, spectacles that's misspelled, and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives? Why did I personally do it now? I needed to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took. Consider this last sunset of 24 and my actions the end of our sickness and a new chapter of health for our people. Rally around the Trump, Musk, Kennedy, and ride this wave to the highest hegemony for all Americans. We are second to no one. Okay, very strange note here. Most of this sounds like a note that I could have written. I mean, a lot of it goes along with the theme of the book I just released, Death of Civilization. But at the end, then it's like, and so this is why I feel the need to off myself, which that's okay, not real clear there. If you read between the lines a little bit, you could infer that he was suffering from post-traumatic stress, suffering from some relationship issues, frustration with the government or with the military. Okay. All right. Those could be things that certainly, we've seen other soldiers that have decided to take that coward's way out. But taking the coward's way out doesn't square with anything else he wrote there. So there are people who might think that that was a false flag, let's say. Now, let's compare what he wrote there. Compare the tone, the cadence of what he wrote, and compare all of the misspellings and improper syntax, things like that, with the letter that was apparently sent to this guy on the Sean Ryan show, Sam, what was his name? Sam Shoemate. So he's saying that he received an email from this guy on the day before he committed suicide in front of Trump Tower. And I have a copy of that email. So we're going to read that now. And we're going to compare what we just read with that. Okay. So here's what that says. And tell you what, I'll go back and I'm going to read you the first part of it because I wasn't able to include the entire email here. It just says, in case there's no salutation or anything. It just starts writing the email. In case I do not make it to my decision point or onto the Mexico border, I am sending this now. Please do not release until 1 January and keep my identity private until then. First off, I'm not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. What we have been seeing with drones is okay, this is the part you can see here. So we'll read this. Is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China in the East Coast, but throughout history, the US. Only we and China have this capability. Our OPSEN location for this activity in the box is below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they used the balloon for SIGINT, that's signals intelligence, and ISR, that's um, electronic intelligence, which are also part of the integrated comms system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. U.S. government needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it and weaponizing it, how China is employing them, and what the way forward is. China is poised to attack anywhere in the East Coast. I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI, and they are looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico. But I won't, but won't because they know I am armed and have a massive VBID. That's vehicular borne IED, improvised explosive device. I've been trying to maintain the very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. I have knowledge of this program and also war crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the admin, DOD, DEA, and CIA. I conducted targeting for these strikes over 125 buildings. 65 were struck because of civilian casualties. That doesn't make sense. There's a lot that doesn't make sense in these last paragraphs that I'll go through in a minute. That killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. U.S. foray that's United States Forces Afghanistan continued strikes after spotting civilians on initial ISR. That's overhead intelligence gathering through drones. It was supposed to take 6 minutes and scramble all aircraft in CENTCOM. The UN basically called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of the cover-up with US 4A and Agent Blank of the DEA, so I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either. So now he's claiming they attempted to abduct him. I don't know if you noticed that. I worked with General Miller's IO staff on this, as well as the response to Bala Murghab, AOB-S commander of the time. Blank can validate this. You need to elevate this to the media so that we avoid world war, because this is a mutually assured destruction situation. For vetting, my LinkedIn is, and I'm not going to say his name, an active duty 18 Zulu out of 110. My profile is public. I have an active top secret, secret compartmented information clearance with UAP, USAP access. And that was sent through Proton Mail. Okay, there's a lot for us to unpack here. I mean, a lot. First of all, my friend Ryan Macbeth made a video about this, and I'm going to put the link to his video in the description here. So, I mean, in the chat, so that you can um, look at it and make your own decision about what he says. Ryan Macbeth claims that the tone and cadence of these two messages that we just showed you do not match, and that is some indication that they were not written by the same person. Ryan also points out that Sam Shoemate was caught inventing an email last year, I believe, about something related to the military in order to get clicks and notoriety. And I trust Ryan Macbeth. Ryan is he's very intelligent. He's very non-biased. I know him fairly well, and I would tend to believe what Ryan says. If Ryan says this is, um, there's something wrong with these two emails, I'm going to give a lot of weight to what Ryan says. Okay. Now, I'm also going to point out that on uh, the the screen grabs of the assailant, I'm just going to call him the assailant, this Green Beret, on the screen grabs that are showing up on social media from his account, it shows that his safety number changed sometime in the recent past, right before he offed himself in front of Trump Hotel. The safety number on Signal is a number that's attached to your phone. If you change phones or change your chip in your phone, that number will change, and that will be visible to everyone. And so what that means is that he changed his phone, or somebody else changed his phone before they sent messages in his name through Signal. So that is being pointed out by some people to say that that someone took over his account before one of these messages was sent. The last one, that would be the email to Sean Ryan. Okay. So that's, again, I'm just putting this out there. You can take it with a grain of salt. You can decide for yourself what you think that means. I'm going to say that in reading those two messages, what I notice is that there are some slight, both messages use military jargon. Okay. That in and of itself does not link that, say that they're written by the same person. Anybody who's been in the military can, and probably does, use that jargon. I use that jargon. Things like CENTCOM or SIGINT or ISR or, those kinds of things. US4A. The fact that both of those messages use some military jargon. The military is a very arcane culture, but anybody who's been in the military would be able to use that jargon. So that doesn't necessarily mean they were written by the same person, but it also doesn't mean they were written by different people either. I also noticed that both of the messages have some errors in spelling and syntax. The one that was released by the Las Vegas police, his quote unquote manifesto, had quite a few more misspellings and problems with syntax than the message that was sent to Sean Ryan. Now, something else that Ryan Macbeth points out about that message, which I will show you again now, is let's see if we can see these here. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to zoom in on this here, and hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. If you look right, let's see if I can, well, look at the, like where it says SIGINT and ISR. where it says gravitic propulsion systems, the word gravitic up there at the top, it has the little red dots underneath it. You've seen those red dots, most likely, when you're writing an email. And those mean that the spell checker on your email program is suggesting that that could be a misspelled word. And so this is a screenshot, ostensibly from an email that Sam Shoemate received from the assailant. However, if it was just a screen grab of the email he received, it would not have these red dots under the possibly misspelled words, because those red dots only show up in the when you are writing an email, not when you're reading an email. If you have you ever noticed that? If somebody sends you an email that has misspelled words in it, your spell checker is not going to highlight those misspelled words. It's only going to highlight misspelled words if you are writing the email, if it is being written or edited, right? And so Ryan Macbeth very astutely noticed that there are a bunch of highlighted, possibly misspelled words in this email. And he says that that could mean that Sam Shoemate actually he was the one who wrote it. And then he took a screen grab of it. Now, I'm going to push back a little bit on that. I mean, I'm putting this out there for you, and you can make up your own mind. This screen grab was uploaded by Sean Ryan, not by Sam Shoemate. And so it's possible that Sean Ryan hit the reply button or the forward button or something and then took the screen grab of it. So it is possible that this came from, from Sean Ryan's account. But if you look down at the bottom of this thing, it says sent from Proton Mail for Android. That actually came, the sent from Proton Mail. If you listen to the interview between Sean Ryan and Sam Shoemate claims that it was his Proton Mail this was sent to. And so if you, there is some suspicion, at least, that Sam Shoemate wrote this email because he has been caught fabricating emails in the past in order to elevate his profile. Okay? Now, either one of these, let's go through the substance of this email for a second, because I think it's worth sort of going through. I'm going to put my photo up here, or my video up here, so that we can talk about this and you can see me talking. First of all, I want to talk about gravitic propulsion systems. What are gravitic propulsion systems? Okay. Jane Ferguson says, who is Sean Ryan? Sean Ryan is the second most popular podcaster in America right now, behind Joe Rogan. Okay. He's a born again Christian. So he's a brother in Christ. So I'm not going to impugn his honesty, his integrity. For that matter, so is Ryan Macbeth. Ryan Macbeth is a Christian as well. Again, he's a friend. And I'm not impugning anything Ryan Macbeth is saying. I'm just putting out what he's saying. And I even put up the chat. I'll do it again. This is Ryan Macbeth's Substack, where he talks about this, and you can watch it for yourself, and you can decide for yourself whether or not this what Ryan says makes sense. Okay. And Walter, it's a little ironic that you are putting in the comments that you want me to stop reading the comments. Do you want me to read your comment, Walter? Should I do that? How about I'll run this the way I want to run it and you just deal with it, okay? Now, let's talk about gravitic propulsion systems. I didn't know what those were either, so I went and did some research on them. And let me read for you what I found. Gravitic propulsion systems are a theoretical means of generating thrust by manipulating gravitational forces, allowing a vehicle to move without relying on conventional propulsion methods like rockets, jet engines, or propellers. These systems are often discussed in the context of advanced aerospace technologies, science fiction, or speculative physics. Here's how they work, or how they would work if they existed, which they don't. Gravitic propulsion would involve creating or altering gravitational fields to produce movement. They might be able to achieve this by generating artificial gravity to pull the craft in a specific direction, manipulating the space-time continuum to reduce inertia or bend space in a way that allows for rapid movement, or exploiting negative energy or exotic matter. Those two things are both purely theoretical, to create repulsive gravitational effects. Now, that would make for efficient space travel for sure, and you would have no need for things like fuel, which would definitely be a positive, and they would apparently be silent, uh, which would be ideal for stealthy or high precision maneuvers. The current status of these of gravitic propulsion is entirely theoretical. There is no experimental evidence or practical technology which supports its existence. However, organizations like NASA and DARPA have explored related concepts under projects like the Breakthrough Propulsion Physics Program, which was closed in 2002, more than 20 years ago, and speculative research on warp drives and negative energy fields. Gravitic propulsion systems are most well known from science fiction. Star Trek had warp drives and impulse engines. Again, those are completely speculative science. They don't exist as far as we know. And so the fact that this guy's saying that China and the United States both have gravitic propulsion systems, like actually functional ones that uh, are in practice, that are in production, is very, very unlikely. It's so unlikely that it's almost not even worth talking about, but this guy brought it up. Now, this guy says that China has been launching them from submarines for years. Well, listen, we know for a fact that the reason China wants to take over Taiwan is because they need the computer chips that Taiwan produces. China is unable to produce the level of sophistication in terms of computer chips that Taiwan produces. And if you want a comparison there, the chips that Taiwan is coming out with right now are 4 nanometers wide. Okay, the transistors on those are 4 nanometer chips. The best China can do right now in terms of creating their own computer chips are 90 nanometers wide. Did you hear what I said? Taiwan is creating 4 nanometer chips. China, the best they can do is 90 nanometers. Okay. So if China's that far behind in the in high technology computer chips, just something like computer chips, there's no possible way China has been creating something that as far as experts know around the world is entirely theoretical. There's no possible way China is able to create gravitic propulsion systems if they're computer chip game is that far behind. We're talking about they are decades behind in computer chips, decades, like at least 20 years behind in computer chips. All right. So, do I think there are gravitic propulsion systems that are powering these drones? No, absolutely not. I've done an entire uh, YouTube broadcast specifically about the drone issue that has some information that I think will help you gain context around this. And I would highly recommend you go watch it. You can go over to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton here on YouTube and you can watch it yourself. Okay. So I just would highly recommend you do that because uh, it will help you understand what this drone issue is all about. Okay. And you can get to the Hot Zone podcast by going to my YouTube channel, which I just put in the chat box right down there below. So click on that real quick and go over there. And while you're at it, folks, hit the like button. If you're getting anything out of this, it really helps YouTube know to show this to other people. Okay. Okay. So KP1 asks for those latecomers, I'll just say there's no way that the guy in the seat of the Tesla Cybertruck could have been unalive because the auto driving feature that Tesla has, the full self-driving, will not work if the person in the seat is even asleep or a mannequin or not paying attention. It actually watches you. It has a camera that's watching you in the car. And if you appear to be distracted, it will shut off the full self-driving and until this is until your trip ends. You have to go stop, restart the car, and start a new trip to get full self-driving back. So there's no way the guy in the seat of the Tesla Cybertruck could have been dead or not paying attention even for that thing to drive him to the Trump Tower. Okay, so a lot of people, that's some conspiracy that's saying that the guy in that this Green Beret was murdered somewhere and they made it look like a suicide by driving him in this Tesla Cybertruck to the hotel entrance and then remotely detonated the truck. That that Tesla Cybertruck would not have driven him there if he was not alive in the seat. Okay, so they do have driverless taxis. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's not possible with a Tesla Cybertruck. Okay, Tesla's full self-driving does not offer that feature. There are Waymo taxis that will drive you somewhere with nobody in the front seat, but Teslas will not do that. Okay? Okay. Now, the simplest answer is probably the correct one. And the simplest answer is that this guy was on a bender. He was distraught. He was having relationship problems. And he maybe was suffered from post-traumatic stress. And he went and decided to go out with a bang. And that is coming specifically from law enforcement in Las Vegas. Okay? Now, let's go on. There's one more thing I want to address with this letter here. And before we get to, all, we'll go back and talk about some of this more. And that's what he talks about down here in terms of Afghanistan. So he says he's been followed from Homeland Security or FBI, and they're looking to move on me. The FBI, look, because of my platform here, I get letters like this all the time from, I'll just say it, crazy people who need help. I get letters from people saying that they're being followed, and that is a common theme among people who are suffering from mental illness. is that they feel like they think they're being um, surveilled or they are being followed. I, so that to me, that paragraph tells me this guy was suffering from a mental illness. I think it's unlikely that that Homeland or FBI would have been following him for this. But then he goes on to talk about, I have knowledge of this program and also war crimes. Now, what do war crimes have to do with gravitic propulsion systems? Absolutely nothing. What if you knew about a gravitic propulsion system? Why would that make you a threat? I'm not sure. In order to create a gravitic propulsion system, we would um, there would have to be so many people involved in that. It's not like four people would get together in their garage and come up with a gravitic propulsion system. There would be entire, it'd be like the Manhattan Project, right? And keeping it secret would be very difficult, especially for many years. Now, he goes on to talk about his time in Afghanistan in 2019. Now, I was in Afghanistan in 2019. I've got more trips to Afghanistan than he does. I was in he had 5 tours to Afghanistan. I've been there 12 times. I was not there in a military capacity. I was there as a journalist, but I was there with Oliver North many times, and he had incredible access to the military. And so I was embedded with the US military on my 12 trips to Afghanistan. Now, I'm not comparing my experience there to his. When you're there in a combat capacity, obviously you're going to be facing stresses that I did not have to face because I got to go home in a shorter period of time. However, I because of my experience in Afghanistan, I can read this and I can call time out on a few things here. Okay, first of all, he talks about the DoD, DEA, and CIA being involved in these airstrikes in Nimruz province in Afghanistan in 2019. Well, I was in Nimruz province uh, before that with the DEA. Many of the times that Oliver North and I went to Afghanistan, we embedded specifically with the DEA unit that was there because Oliver North is a hero to the guys in the DEA, and they were very helpful. And they're also not burdened by some of the operational security requirements that the other rest of the military under Title 10 is. And so we could get better information, better coverage. We could go more places. We could actually do things with the special operations community that we couldn't do if we were embedded with the special ops guys directly. Instead, we would embed with the DEA, and the DEA would be attached to the special ops guys. And so we were uh, KP1. I'm going to make you a moderator for this so that you can help out with if there's people using bad language and stuff. And I trust you. So KP1, congratulations. You're now a mod and you have the power glove there. Okay. So again, in my time in Afghanistan, I spent a lot of time with the DEA. And I'll tell you, the DEA had 2 missions in Afghanistan. One was to train the counter narcotics police in Afghanistan. And one was a team they called the FAST team, the DEA FAST team, which did direct action raids against narco trafficking bad guys in Afghanistan. Now, the DEA FAST team was a legit, hardcore, straight up special ops unit. They trained with SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, HRT from the FBI, everybody. These guys were hardcore and they were awesome. And very few people got to see the inner workings of the DEA FAST teams. But Oliver North and I embedded with them many times over the years. And those guys, if there was a mission going off in Nimruz province where civilians, where there were lots of airstrikes on 125 buildings happening in one day, it would have been the DEA FAST team that was involved with that. Almost certainly. There's a small chance it could have been the other DEA team that was training the Afghan counter narcotics people, but almost certainly it would have been the DEA FAST teams. But there's a problem here. You see what he says, this happened in 2019. Well, the DEA FAST teams were disbanded in 2017, right before Donald Trump took office. Or the decision to disband them was made at the end of the Obama administration. And that's a real shame because they were a very effective unit. And probably that's why the Obama administration disbanded them. So the DEA FAST team could not have been involved in airstrikes in Nimruz province in 2019. At least it would be very unlikely because they dramatically scaled back their operations in Afghanistan. And the DEA guys that were involved in training the Afghan counter narcotics people were a very small unit, and they were stationed in Kabul. They had a compound there where they trained guys. And once in a while, they would go out on a mission here or there. But it's much less likely that after 2019, because that actually got scaled way back as well in 2017. So I know from personal experience, from knowing these guys, from being with them, embedding with them, that what this assailant is saying in this email is likely untrue. I also happen to know that it would be, look, the United States did not bomb civilians. They tried very, very, very hard not to bomb civilians, to the extent that they actually put American soldiers at inordinate amounts of risk to avoid bombing civilians. I'll give you one story about that. One of the operations, the units that we embedded with, was a part of the 7th Special Forces group, and they did a mission to go to a valley up north in northern Afghanistan that was a known hotbed for the Taliban. They drove in there and they knew they were probably going to get contact. And so they had attack helicopters following their convoy of armored MRAPs into this valley. When that happened, they did make contact, and they were being shot at from some buildings and tents on the mountainsides on either side of this valley. And so they called the attack helicopter and said, hey, we've got contact. We're catching fire from these buildings. Help us out here. And the attack helicopter said, I'm sorry, because of my rules of engagement, I cannot see inside those buildings. And since I can't see inside those buildings, even though you're being shot at from those buildings, I cannot shoot back because there could be civilians in those buildings. Now, I do know that every time the United States dropped a bomb, or, I mean, because one of the things we would do is we had a big problem, as you know, with roadside bombs in Afghanistan. And so they would have a drone up, going ahead of our convoys or something like that. And they would see some guys out there digging a hole beside the road and they'd have an improvised explosive device they were about to stick in that hole. And the ISR, the drone, would catch them dead to rights. It would see them emplacing this bomb. And they would call in an airstrike. They would drop a bomb on those two guys that were emplacing the IED, and they would take them out. The next day, there would be 70 graves in the village next to where that happened. And there would be people lined up at the nearest military base, Afghans, saying, you killed my kids, you killed my uncle, you killed my cousin, you killed my mother, you killed my father. because the United States was in the practice of paying out like $70,000 for every wrongful death that we caused in Afghanistan. And so it created this huge incentive for Afghans to line up and claim that they had people killed in the, in whatever bombing took place, even though we could see that there was only 2 people there when we dropped the bomb. The next day, they'd say there were 70 people killed. And rather than mess with it, they would just pay out. They would just pay those people. And I mean, it's crazy. So I say all that to say that I can tell from reading this last major paragraph in the assailant's email, or ostensibly the assailant's email, that what he's saying there is highly unlikely. I'm not going to say it's completely untrue, but I'm going to say it's highly, highly unlikely. Now, again, it is also at least somewhat unlikely that the assailant actually wrote this email. It's somewhat likely that it was written by not Sean Ryan, I'm sorry, by his interviewee, which is Sam Shoemate. Okay. So I think it is worth pointing out that there's a lot to be skeptical of in the Sean Ryan interview. Okay. Hustler Arms says you need to do more research. Actually, I would venture to say, Hustler Arms, I have done quite a bit more research than you have on this. But you're welcome to your opinion, man. Okay. So, yeah, they were. So let's just back up and let's reiterate. Okay. So there is a. Thank you, Teresa. This assailant, this event that took place in Las Vegas. Now I'm gonna just wrap up by saying I spoke to through our connections with the Direct Action Resource Center, several of the police officers who responded to this event in Las Vegas are alumni from they're alumni from Darcy, from the Direct Action Resource Center. Okay. And they believe that it is most likely that the assailant in this event was simply having a really, really bad time. He was either on some sort of medication or drugs. He went on a real bender. He was suffering from post-traumatic stress or relationship issues. And he just decided to go out with a bang, literally, in front of the Trump Tower. Now, I put more stock in the letter that was released by the Las Vegas Police Department as being valid and legitimately from the assailant than I do in the email that is ostensibly sent to Sam Shoemate. However, I'll let you make up your own mind. Okay? So, bottom line from all of this is that there are a lot of questions floating around, and we should attempt, as the Bible says, to rightly divide the word of truth. We should not be affected by everything out there. We should, look critically at the things that are floating around out there. And I want you to look at it with the understanding that everybody has an axe to grind, that there are lots of people that are at war for your opinions. that people are waging war against you and me in the information battle space every day. Okay. Irene Trujillo says, why do you think he did that in front of Trump Tower? I think he was trying to get the notoriety that would come from doing it in front of Trump Tower. Now, some people are making an issue out of the fact that this guy was a special forces soldier. And so if he wanted to blow something up, he would have been able to do so in a much more spectacular manner. That may be the case. However, it is very, very, very difficult to get actual explosives in the United States. And if you decided at the last minute, even, I mean, I've been through demolition course, I've been through demo school myself. And if I wanted to create an explosive last minute because I decided, hey, this is it. It's over for me. I want to go out with a bang. I couldn't get my hands on military grade explosive. I would probably have done something about like what this guy in front of the Trump Tower did. If it was me, as a former special operations soldier myself, who has gone through demo school, I would probably have resorted to about what he did. I would have thought, hey, Teslas have a gigantic lithium battery, and I could probably make that thing go high order by taking some fireworks and mixing them with gasoline and mixing them with uh, like uh, propane tanks, putting all that together. I've seen lots and lots and lots of improvised explosive devices on my 12 trips to Afghanistan and 15 trips to the war in Iraq and 4 trips so far to Syria. Look, I've got a lot of experience with this stuff, and it doesn't seem strange to me that he had a hard time finding plastic explosive or something if he wanted to create something like that. Ever since uh, the Timothy McVeigh event that took place back in 1992 in Oklahoma City at the federal building there, where he used an improvised uh, he improvised with fertilizer that was uh, modified to make it go high order and detonate. They have made it much, much more difficult to get large amounts of fertilizer. And if you had filled that, even if he had been able to get that much fertilizer, if he had filled that Tesla Cybertruck with fertilizer and did the same thing Timothy McVeigh did, it would not have been enough of an explosion to destroy the front of that building or anything. Okay, because Timothy McVeigh had to use a moving truck, like a big box truck, to do that. All right. So I've given you the best I can from my own research and my own experience as to how to think about this event in Las Vegas. But it pains me to see people, especially in the Christian community, try so hard to believe things that are just very, very uh, unlikely. It is most likely that the simplest answer is the correct one. And the simplest answer in this case is that there was a troubled individual, troubled for whatever reason, who decided to go out with a bang, and he did so in Las Vegas to get the most notoriety that he could. And that's all I've got to say about that. Okay. Now, I'm about to go live on my channel here shortly with a man from Las Vegas who is helping troubled people. He's made it his ministry to help people who are homeless and having mental issues in Las Vegas. And we're going to go live over on my channel here very shortly on the Hot Zone. So I would recommend that you go watch that over on the Hot Zone. I just put a link to my podcast there in the chat. You can also follow me at chuckholton.com. You can become a supporter over there and get a copy of my new book, Death of Civilization, which will help you make you and your family safer in the chaotic days ahead. And I do think they will be chaotic. Okay. So I'm amused by all the people. Look, if you disagree with me in the comments, that's fine. I'm doing the best I can to give you my take on this using the research that I've done and my experience. You don't have to agree. You make up your own mind. Okay. So God bless you. We'll see.